Hello, and welcome to another episode of Defining Your Brand podcast. Today on the podcast, I have Ayesha Mahali. Ayesha is the founder of Story Clout, which is where she teaches business owners how to use Instagram stories for their business and to teach people what they do all through Instagram stories. So if you are a business owner and you use Instagram for your business and use stories to talk about your business, I think this is a great episode for you, and I hope you enjoy. Well, thanks for joining me today. For those who don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is Ayesha, and I am from Irvine, California, and I have a small business called Story Clout. And what that pretty much is that I create customizable, strategic Instagram story templates for small business owners, and I also produce TikTok and Instagram Reels.
Nice. So are you on TikTok?
I am actually on TikTok, but what I'm noticing is that I actually show up more for my client than for myself,
Okay.
which is kind of something that is like a little interesting because you would think that I'm like posting videos every single day.
Yeah.
But I do go on TikTok every single day. I'm always trying to check out what's trending, what's new, what's interesting, and just, find resources that we can kind of create from.
Yeah. It's funny because I got on there, I would say at the beginning of the pandemic, and I started to do what I thought I wanted to do on there, and then I just stopped altogether because Instagram's kind of my thing, and so I ended up but I'm on TikTok all the time watching everybody's videos, and I love because they have tons of businesses on there, which I think a lot of the people I talk to don't think that that's the case. They think it's just like kids dancing around or whatever. So
Exactly.
but yeah, I love it. So yeah, I've been trying to get into it more and actually post on there, but it's still weird for me.
Yeah, I mean, for me, when I first started TikTok or we created an account, it was mainly just for entertainment.
Hmm.
I was like, I want to know what everyone's up to, what this whole thing is about. And it sucked me in super, super quick. I was instantly into it. And yeah, it's really crazy how someone can keep your attention for so long. And sometimes these videos are looping and you're like, wait, is this the beginning again?
Right.
Or I'm just really interested in seeing people's stories and what they're up to.
Yeah.
But I know that TikTok now serves much a more wider population when it comes to TikTok, small businesses and larger businesses. They kind of use that to run ads more than just creating a regular ad for the on Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever the case might be.
Yeah. What kind of people do you follow on there?
I follow a lot of fashion related content because
Okay.
I love fashion. It's kind of where I started my creative journey.
Mhm.
And then I also follow a lot of DIY, like home decor, or people who are kind of showing what they're able to make from, I think it's called a Cricut.
Oh yeah.
Those printers that create
Mm-hmm.
all this stuff. People literally created a business out of thin air
Yep.
in the past 6 months, and I just think that's so amazing for someone who has a small business too, to see someone just so driven and ready to hustle. So I really admire that, to be honest.
Yeah, it's amazing. People who, it's almost out of boredom or out of not being able to do something else, they've taken this thing that was just a hobby or just, something they just did. Friends that would just make a t-shirt because they were signing up for the volleyball team or something, and they were making, team t-shirts or whatever. And now they're making businesses out of it. It's crazy.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And people say oh yeah, I just started a business because people are asking me how they do it, or can you make one for me? And I'm like, wow, that's amazing. That's
Yeah.
really amazing.
So you said you started in kind of fashion worlds. Tell me about that.
Okay, so ever since I was 5 years old, I grew up watching America's Next Top Model. I don't know if you ever heard of that show,
Oh yeah.
but I've always wanted to be someone that Tyra Banks could help me get into the modeling career.
Mm-hmm.
So I would go to my house. Well, obviously I'd be at my house because I was 5 years old.
Right.
But I would model in front of my parents, and I would try all these really weird, awkward, modeling stunts, and I would see these women in cold water, and I would just really admire their persistence and after they wanted to go. But when I got to an appropriate age to start modeling, my parents just never put me into it. So it wasn't until maybe I was like 17, 18, where I took it into my account, and I started using my iPad mini, and I
Mm.
purchased it mainly for school. But what I would do is that sometimes I would skip class because honestly, I was like a creative. I wasn't a college student. I
Yeah.
still went, but I remember setting up my iPad against my kitchen wall,
Hmm.
and then I would play it on record, and then I would just start kind of modeling in front of the kitchen and I would try different clothes, different like outfits, and like different positions, and that's what really started me getting into like blogging and like posting it on like Instagram. That's
Yeah.
kind of how it started there.
So was your focus more on, well, I guess, is it still like, is fashion still a focus for you, or is that kind of changed?
It's changed a lot, to be honest. I
Yeah.
wanted it to be my main focus. I was like, I'm gonna become an influencer if I can't be a model. But becoming like an influencer is super hard, and I didn't see it profitable.
Mm.
So what I did was I would just hang out with friends who were also photographers, and we'd go to like photography meets, and we would take photos, and that would really get me out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
And that's when I started to get more comfortable collaborating with other photographers or small businesses around my area,
Yeah.
which led me to join the blogger community. So I was in a blogger community for maybe about 2 years, and they're still active here in Orange County, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And like they have a lot of different regions within the United States. But long story short, it's still something that I want to do in the future, but it's going to be mainly more like a fashion company, like a small
Okay.
fashion line. And I want to like focus on like petite women like myself.
Yeah. So I'm curious because I'm a photographer. So like when you started reaching out to these photographers or collaborating with, were these friends of yours, or were they people that you just found online? How'd you connect with these people?
So at that time, I was going to a community college, and
Okay.
there was a girl in my class who was a photographer, and she came out with a small brand called Positive Minds. And she's like, "Hey, would you be interested in like modeling for my T-shirt?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course." And within that day, she brought me into a crowd of like hundreds of photographers. Like, I don't know if you've ever been
Okay.
to photo meet before.
No, surprisingly not. It's kind of funny. Yeah, I don't know if people do that a lot around here, but I've never done that.
Yeah, so it's pretty much a bunch of photographers and like, models, content creators come together and just take photos of each other.
Yeah.
And at that time, I was very into like street style. So it would be very like city like photos. And so from working or not working from just kind of creating with her, I was able to meet other people.
Mm.
And then that's when I started to get comfortable, like, oh, I feel comfortable like collaborating with you, maybe with you not so much, depending on your style.
Right.
And that's what really kicked off my content creating, like back in, I believe, 2015, 2016, maybe.
Okay. So is that for, I know I'm kind of fast forwarding a ton now, but for like the stuff that you do now for your own Instagram, do you reach out to some of those photographers, or do you take your own photos? How does that work?
I do still keep in touch with some of those photographers because we've gained like such a close relationship. So when it comes to me having like branding photos for my small biz, I definitely reach out to some friends or people that I've met in the last year or two to take my photos. So recently I actually had a brand shoot at my house. I'm really
And
excited about that. Yeah.
that's awesome. Well, I can definitely, since that's what I do, I definitely resonate with that. I love that. Um, so kind of, I guess, what transitions you into the next phase of what you did after, you know, trying out the influencer thing? What was kind of the next step for you?
Well, after realizing that like that whole influencer world wasn't for me and I was kind of more just a creative,
Mm.
I started trying to work with like a small fashion company, and I started blogging for them. And then within blogging, I knew that I was able to learn how to use an account to run as management. And early in those days is actually when I joined Social Curator,
Mm.
and they taught me pretty much everything about like captions and photos and your categories and like what you should be like have in your bio. So that was really like the foundation for me to start. And it made me kind of think more bigger instead of just thinking kind of like, oh, I just work for this company. It's like, oh, maybe I can do something for myself, or what I'm learning, I can help others with. So
Mm.
that transitioned me to do a social media management for a few years, actually.
Okay. So when you like did the blogging side of things, was it like a traditional blog versus like social media, meaning like you did the full paragraph and post on like what was that like? Because I see people do that and I know that people talk about that, but it's not a world that I'm necessarily familiar with.
Yeah, it's definitely a little bit old school, I would say. In nowadays, I feel like blogs are much more shorter. I was kind of doing like 3 to 5 paragraphs, and it was mainly around like the clothes that we would be kind of promoting at that time. So they would
Mm,
also send me the clothes, and I would take photos with another photographer, and then I would pretty much create content for them, and we were just kind of working together like that.
that's awesome. So,
Mhm.
and then you moved into the social media management for that company.
Yes. I noticed that like what I was able to do for myself, I could do for others. And
Mm,
I found a lot of like joy in helping other people. And I'm like, oh, I really like this. It's pretty
yeah.
awesome.
So did you do that, the social media management for other companies too, or mainly just them?
Yes, I did. Most recently, I was working with a realtor,
Okay.
and I was managing her Instagram account as well as like pretty much helping her film her Instagram videos, YouTube videos,
Mm,
and we pretty much, yeah, I pretty much created content for that. So
that's awesome.
I did it for a little while, yeah.
How, I'm curious because I see people all the time. There are, a lot of people out there that are talking and trying to teach other people how to do the social media management thing too, and like teaching them how to reach out to people. And I'm curious for you, did you reach out to other people? Did they reach out to you? How did that work?
A lot of it was word of mouth, to be honest.
Okay.
I was in a pretty fortunate place where
Mm,
I would work behind the scenes very often, and people would be like, "Oh, that's so cool how you made that story," or like, "How do you know so much about this?" And I'm like, "Oh, I just kind of been researching here and there, have some resources." And they're like, "Oh, would you do it for me?" And I was like, "Yes,
yes,
yes, I will do it for
yes, I
you."
will.
So a lot of my work, thankfully, has been word of mouth. So I'm pretty
That's
grateful about that, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I think people probably underestimate word of mouth extremely. That's how my business started. I just kind of, did a couple shoots and then people just started talking about it. And I think, we, especially now, we're in a day and age of everybody's doing an ad for something. And I think people kind of underestimate how powerful that word of mouth is.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So then after that, you did the social media management kind of thing while you were working for that company. Where did that lead you next after that?
That's when I really got into stories. That's when I
Yeah.
really started to focus because I noticed that like social media management can sometimes be overwhelming. And then I wanted to pivot my business to something that like I absolutely love. And that's when I really started to enjoy stories. Like I would
Mm,
create stories for Snapchat, but once that kind of faded out, I started focusing like, okay, how can I tell a really cool story from like beginning to end, but also like find a way to people engage with me.
yeah.
So I try to create like little mini movie Netflix seasons of my life throughout
Yeah.
the days and the weeks. And I started doing it for other businesses when we would go film behind the scenes, and they just absolutely loved it.
Yeah. So do you still use Snapchat?
No, I have the account, but
Yeah.
I don't ever go on it, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Like I'm curious, like when you used it a lot, how did you said you kind of created a story with it. Obviously that was what it was for, but like what did what did that look like? Did you use it just to document your day or I'm
Yeah,
curious.
yeah, it was pretty much just to document my day. Like as I mentioned, like I wanted to become an influencer so bad. So I was like, hey friends, like this is what I'm doing today. Like look at me go to school and like go to my kickboxing class and like take photos by myself. But what I would do is like I would try to make it seem like a movie. So I would start off by like, introducing myself, saying hi, of course, to my friends. They were just my friends.
Yeah.
Um, but then afterwards I would like use my phone and like move it a certain way and like go into the bushes and like find a cool spot, and people would be like,
Mm.
"Whoa, how are you doing that?" Or "Where are you?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm in my backyard," you know.
That's funny.
And I
So
just wanted
how,
to entertain people.
yeah, how did you like what like caused you to be in that mindset of making it kind of like a movie? Was did you do video in your background, or is that you just wanted to have that look to it?
I was just really creative. I would say I was
Mm,
just really creative since I was young. And I actually, in college, I started taking a cinematography class and photography
okay,
class. So that also enhanced like my visual creative eye when it came to creating my stories.
that's cool. So when you saw stories come out on Instagram, was it like this is weird, or was it just a given for you?
I feel like I was ready for it because
Mm,
I honestly like I think all platforms are really important to use in a business, but I just love Instagram so much. Like if I could pick one platform, it'd probably be Instagram.
yeah,
So the fact that they have stories, that they have reels now, that you can post long form videos, like it's pretty much, yeah, I was really excited to see that the stories were there.
that's funny. I feel like when I first saw it, I was like, this is a ripoff of Snapchat. This is never going to work, or
Yeah.
people aren't going to get into this. I remember seeing it the day it was released and thinking, this is weird. And now, I mean, I use it all the time, and it just seems like a perfect. And like I said, I like you said, I mean, I have Snapchat too, but I'm never on it.
Mhm.
Maybe to like send a picture directly to a friend or something, but that's it. So it's funny how resist. That's why I asked, because for me, I was so resistant to it in the beginning, and now it's all I use.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I do remember people saying like it was a rip off for sure of
Mhm.
Snapchat. But I'm like, you we just gotta move with the times. We gotta move with the times.
Yeah, and I think probably, I mean, for me, maybe not for, oh, gosh, this makes me sound old, but for people that are younger than me, that I like the idea of having everything in one place. So it's hard to be like, okay, well, stories on Instagram now does what Snapchat did. Why do I need to have Snapchat and Instagram separate if they can do the same thing?
Exactly, especially because I don't see Snapchat as a platform for like getting like ideal customers or
Mm,
clients. It's just more kind of like a way to like engage with your friends, I think.
yeah. So how do you, I mean, kind of moving forward, since this is kind of what you're doing now, how do you use stories to kind of support your business versus, the influencer type to what you're doing now?
So, what I decided to focus on was creating like customizable stories.
Mm,
What I would notice is that every time I went to like a personal brand page or when I would go to like a small business, I would notice that they would lack like the most. I noticed that they could provide more content and value than what they were showing.
mm,
Like I would view them post maybe a photo of their product, but they wouldn't really mention about it or where it's from or why they started their business. They weren't really talking to their audience with um, value and just really being informed of who they are, what they do, and why they do it.
mm,
And because as like a creative, like I always thought to myself, like, oh, what if there was a way that I can create a strategy for these personal brands or small businesses, but also make it in a way that it represents their brand aesthetic.
yeah.
So I focus on creating custom story templates with a strategy. And the strategy usually includes like what we're talking about and like what engagement tools we'll be using as well.
Mm. So how did you start presenting that to businesses, or how did you kind of start pitching that to people, I guess?
Well, after having like a few conversations with other women in business that I look up to, they were just like, you need to market this. Like, you need to tell people what you're doing because honestly, I don't see it be done anywhere else. Like, I know there are graphic designers that people have, but they don't, there's no niche to like what I'm doing. At least I think so, you
Yeah.
know? And I think what made me start was just like, um, just talking about it and then sharing on my profile like what I'm doing.
Hmm.
And every time I would go film a client, I would do their behind the scenes for the whole day.
Mm.
And then I would give them at the end of the day, as we were like packing up, I'm like editing, I'm putting like text, I'm like color coding, I'm editing photos, I'm like cutting like 1 minute videos to like 10 seconds. And I'm like, here are your stories. And
That's awesome.
normally, yeah, I think that's kind of what started. And luckily, I was able to get hired that way. So
Okay.
they're like, hey, you know what? Like, I really appreciate what you're doing. I understand that it takes a lot of time, and I'd like to hire you for this next gig. And so it was pretty fortunate for me to be in a small circle, a small, powerful circle that really encouraged what I was doing.
So it sounded like you were, so were you there for like another reason and you just decided to kind of create these stories and give it to them?
Yep, that's pretty much what happened. Working with in a video media agency, we work with a lot of clients. And for someone who just loves stories so much, I'm like, I just want to capture the day.
Yeah.
And I was using it for my content. I was using it for the vid project. And then I also used it for the client. And sometimes I would also, I got to a point where I started to understand like how I wanted to tell the story and what I wanted to show.
Mm.
So I created my own version of what the day looked like. And then I created another version of what it looked like for that client. So it
Yeah.
shows a little bit of a different from it.
Right.
And yeah, that's what really, I think, started to, I tried to get a system going.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a huge takeaway there for people because I think a lot of people don't show up for a job, for something else and see it as an opportunity. Like in this case, you created a whole nother business. And what's awesome, I love you said like it's just something that you, whether you said it was that you love to do it or you just felt natural to do that. I think that people aren't always looking for that opportunity of what feels natural or what are you already doing that you love to do and give it as a gift to someone and then they can see what you can offer them.
Yeah. And I honestly, when I like you mentioned, like, and how I said, like, it felt so natural to me. It's something that I really already love to do. So in the process, I wasn't thinking like, oh, I could totally like make this person feel this way, and then they're gonna want to use it, and then everyone's gonna want to use it. It was just
Yeah.
more like, this is what I love to do, and this is how I capture the day. And yeah, I think that's what opened a lot of conversations to where I'm at now.
Yeah, for sure. Today's sponsor is brought to you by Live Well, Love Well Apparel. Live Well, Love Well Apparel is a t-shirt company, but it's not just a t-shirt company. I mean, how many times have you bought a t-shirt and that you've loved, but it's actually not doing anything other than just being an extra t-shirt in your closet? How many of you have bought something to support a cause or support an organization and you bought something, but it may be something that you never wear or never really cared about? Live Well, Love Well Apparel is changing that. So how it's doing that is that it is designing t-shirts that you actually want to wear. This material is soft, it's got tri-blend material, it's comfortable, and it's just an amazing t-shirt and something that, like I said, you want to wear and want to pair with other things in your closet. And not only that, but it's a company that gives back. So this company right now is donating the proceeds to No Kid Hungry. No Kid Hungry is an organization that helps kids that may not have access to food at home. So when they go to school, that they have a meal that's provided for them. Right now in this pandemic, though, kids don't have that opportunity. They're not at school where school lunches are provided. So No Kid Hungry is making sure that these kids that normally have food provided for them still have a meal. So go check out Live Well, Love Well Apparel by going to lwlwapparel.com. So you talked a little bit, tell me if you can talk about it or if you don't want to, it's fine, but you talked about being a part of Social Curator.
Mhm.
Can you tell everyone what you uh, maybe we'll give a little bit of background on what it is, and then you can share kind of what you do there.
Yeah. So it's pretty much social creator is like a community and like a membership platform for small businesses to have the correct resources to grow their business. And it was in the year of 2019, back in I think August or September is when I first started working with Social Creator.
Mm-hmm.
And this was in the time where their Instagram story templates were just released. So for those who don't know, they also provide like an action plan every month, captions and photos. And then, just to add that extra sauce, they started to do Instagram stories.
Yeah.
And I was actually lucky enough to be able to customize those stories.
Nice.
So I remember that day very well. I did like a 17-hour day and I knocked out like 15 story sets. And it was when I realized that, like, wow, like I really, really love what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
And fast forward to a year now, it's actually been a year now. Um, I'm working with Social Creator as their visual content producer. So each month I design their story templates for our members, as well as provide a strategy when it comes to like the copy or the engagement tools. And yeah.
That's awesome. So how do um, tell people a little bit how can people use stories, whether it's yours or what something of their own, to kind of enhance their business and use that to their advantage?
A few tips that I would give is that I would focus on like what are the topics that you talk about and you already feel comfortable sharing with your audience.
Mm,
And a lot of that can look like the behind the scenes of your business. Like, what does a day in your life look like? What does it consist of? Are you on Zoom calls? Are you someone who has like a soap company and you curate your own soap and you have different types of aromas and oils? Like, what does that look like? Or even like sharing the benefits of working with you. Like, if you're a social media manager, like, I think it's really important to not only give out resources, but talk about like how you're able to help others to save them, whether it's you're saving them time or you're just really helping them manage something that, they're too busy to do because they're running something else and they really need that extra hand. So I think sharing like the benefits, the behind the scenes, it's really important when it comes to stories, but always remembering to have like a call to action,
mm,
as I feel like you could share some really awesome stories, but if you're not providing like any sort of like poll, engagement tool, Q&A, or quiz, there's no way that people will really engage with you unless they already feel so comfortable to kind of like swipe up and say, hey, this is super awesome, or can you give me more insight?
yeah.
And the more that you actually use these engagement tools for stories, the more Instagram rewards you because you're saying like, hey, John has been seeing a lot of your stories. He engages with everything, which sometimes typically results into a DM. So if you're
Mm.
replying to like a Q&A, that person will appear as a DM, I believe. And then as like the time goes by, if that person continues to engage with you, my my or their like story will always appear on their timeline because
Yeah.
Instagram's like, hey, this person engages with you a lot. Here's their story, and you'll see more of their content. So I feel like people who want to use it as a strategy is really important to just incorporate like things that are valuable and then also like an engagement tool.
So can you explain, if there happens to be anyone out there that doesn't know kind of what you mean by engagement tool, what that means?
So yes, on your Instagram stories, there's going to be a little menu, and I consider it the IG menu.
Mm,
And there you'll find like a little section where it says GIF poll, which is pretty much like a question you can ask, like, do you like coffee or iced tea? Are you a night owl or are you a morning person? They also provide other engagement tools like quizzes.
mm,
And I feel like quizzes are always so fun because it makes you feel like sometimes I like to test people, like how well do they know what I'm doing? And so I'll be like, what do you think I do for my business? Social media management, am I a blogger or my content creator, and then I like to see how they reply back, and that allows me to know like, okay, am I providing enough information for people to know what I'm doing?
mm.
I think that's where you can really start to think strategically on like how important and like valuable that could be.
So if, like, let's say someone took one of those quizzes and they guessed wrong, or you saw a lot of wrong guesses, would you then, how would you kind of respond to that? Or what would be your next steps for your business to be like, okay, clearly people don't know what I do, or at least have the wrong idea about it, like what would you do to kind of follow up to that kind of response?
Sometimes when it comes to those things, I don't always respond, but I do like to post on my feed. So maybe like the following day, what I'll do is I'll do like an about me caption and photo, kind of giving an introduction of like who I am, what I do and why I do it.
Mm,
And that way that people can be like, oh, okay, so this is what she does. Or maybe I'll show them like a behind the scenes. And I'll sometimes be real. I was like, I can't believe you guys don't know what I do. Like,
yeah.
why are you following me? Like, do you just consume and like don't pay attention? I'll
Yeah.
try to be silly with it. I'll try to be real. And then I'll just kind of talk about it more. And I'll honestly, I think it's good to introduce yourself at least like once a month because if you
Mm,
get a new audience, sometimes they don't know exactly what you do, but there's something about you that they like, and maybe that's why they're following you.
yeah. It's funny because sometimes I'll go to people's profiles and well, one actually, someone I connected with, I I think it was through Instagram, but someone local to me, and she never showed her face, and I was like, we don't know who you are. Like people want to see because for I've learned I find it so funny, but like anytime I post a photo of myself, which is it feels strange to say, but people respond to it more, and I'm sure it's more about people feel more connected to you after they see your face. And so, yes, you can post a pretty photo or talk about what you're doing, um, but for some reason, people just really respond to that introduction. I found at least, and she. It's funny after that conversation that I had with her, she posted a photo of herself, just like a full on photo of her face, and she had tons of engagement.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty amazing. Like, yeah, like for me too, like if I come to an account and I don't see any photos of their faces, I may not follow them.
Mm,
Because I'm like, who are you? How can I connect this human relationship, you know?
yeah,
And then if not, or if I do find them interesting, maybe I'll reach out to them or reply to a few of their comments on their feed. And yeah, but I definitely agree that photos perform like the highest, and it's like the best way to like get to know someone.
yeah.
And on those posts too, like it doesn't always have to be business related. Like I like talking about like my favorite margaritas that I make every weekend or where I like to go hiking, you know? So I feel like you can get really personal without feel like you're like selling yourself or like it's a like a resume about yourself.
Yeah. Well, so, I mean, I'm gonna ask now, where's your, like, you live in, where in California you live?
I live in Orange County, so Irvine, California.
Okay. I was gonna say, where do you like to go hiking when you're out there?
So I actually I like to go to the beaches a lot.
Okay.
So we're near like Newport Beach and like kind of Crystal Cove area.
Yeah.
So across the street from Crystal Cove, they have some nice mountains and like scenic routes.
Yeah.
It's nothing crazy, but you do get to overlook the ocean a bit, and it's just kind of nice weather like on the
Yeah.
weekend. And yeah, I used to go to Sand Canyon when I was in high school a lot because I
Mm,
ran cross country. So I'll go there, but I'm kind of like the scenic route when it comes to like more beaches when it comes to hiking.
yeah. I have a friend that she lives out in Venice, and I don't know exactly where we went, but we drove along the water and then hiked up this big mountain, and it overlooked the water, and I'm in the Midwest, so we don't get that. So that was definitely a treat for me. But have you always grown up in California?
Yes.
Okay, so you were like, well, how is that? Because for me, I'm curious as if there's a differentiation in kind of the work that you're in this kind of creative field. Because I feel like for the Midwest, my experience has been that creatives can kind of be isolated from each other. Like they kind of work in their own space and, in their homes or kind of go to the coffee shop behind their computers and don't interact a lot with each other. But it's from an outside perspective looking at California, it seems like people are always collaborating or always working together. Is that true?
Yes. Yeah, I would say that's true. Before I started working at home, I go to coffee shops like every single day. And
Mm,
like even after like I got out of class. And it is true that a lot of, I would say, creatives come out, and I think they just really enjoy like the Californian culture,
Mm.
like being near the ocean, or just kind of like the weather, and like the coffee's great, and the people are nice. Well, for the most part, I would say people are
Yeah.
nice. And I think it's just, yeah, it's just kind of it's just a really chill place to be. And I honestly can't imagine myself living anywhere else.
Yeah. I'm I would love that, would be a dream to live out there someday. So I'm making it a goal of mine. I'm just
Oh,
gonna
that'd be
speak it out loud. Yeah.
awesome.
Um, so tell people a little bit like what, do you have anything that's kind of coming up, or is, business as usual? What does business look like as you're going forward?
Well, I've been working on creating like better systems for my business.
Mm,
So kind of like getting more, my onboarding's getting a little bit more better. And what's exciting is that I'm actually going to be launching my website very, very soon.
oh, cool.
So if you guys decide to follow me on Instagram, I'll definitely have a release date for that. And that's going to pretty much talk about everything that I'm doing, from like custom story templates to doing kind of like video coverage for live events. I would do it when we would have a client who does like public speaking, and I would go film not only the behind the scenes, but also do stories of that day.
Okay.
And then I also focus on IGTV. So I noticed that like a lot of people who create videos sometimes don't have the most engaging way to show that they have a video.
Yeah.
And by me creating like a custom template with like swipe up options really allows them to kind of, I feel like, boost their visibility when it comes to that. So you'll definitely be seeing Story Clout being released very soon,
Yeah.
and also be sharing a little bit more in the future how someone can work with me if they're interested in like creating Instagram reels or TikToks for their business.
So is that going to be more like downloadable templates, or is that going to be you creating custom stuff for people, or both?
So what it looks like is that after I kind of have like I have a conversation with a possible client. What I do is that I try to understand like their brand colors and aesthetic. If they have any logos, I ask them for images. If they don't have any, then maybe I'll be able to provide them with stock images, or just
Mm,
recommend a photographer. And yes, these templates are downloadable. So once I do my first set of design, I give my client a timeline to be able to revise it. So I want to make sure that they're happy with it.
yeah.
And then once I complete those revisions, then I'll send them to them and they'll be able to download.
Nice. So do you, like when you work with people, or I guess as you're planning to, do you recommend, I'm speaking as a photographer here, do you recommend for them to get their own photos? Do you like, how do you work that out? Do you like hire another person to do stock photos, or do you leave that all up to them?
If they're unable to take their own photos or they don't have their own photos, I will do my best to be able to kind of recommend a photographer. And I mainly work with people within like Orange County, LA County. So that way I'm able to give them like a really good reference. But if they somehow are out of state, I would still do my best to find someone that aligns with their brand and their vision,
Sure.
and make sure that they have some sort of maybe even mood board to what that looks like. Because sometimes like people go and they're like, okay, I have like these three professional suits, and but I don't know how to stand, or I don't know what to do or what to incorporate. You
Yeah.
probably know this very, very well.
Yeah.
And I would definitely recommend it. And if that's something that maybe you know, they're not able to do, I would find a way to get them stock images that still
Okay.
represents their brand. I'm looking for a way to work with photographers to create stock images. I
Yeah.
haven't got there yet, but I would definitely love to in the future.
Yeah. I mean, something that I've been working towards, and maybe offline we can figure this out, but like figure out how to offer that to people, like the, because not everybody needs to be in their photos, although I recommend it. But if they don't need to be in all of them, or if they aren't necessarily their brand, but they um, have a theme. Like I've been looking at ways to, shoot stock images for people that and kind of create that so they can use it in there. So I don't know
Mhm.
if that's, I feel like it's something that people could use because not everybody either has the time or wants to research photographers or, so kind of offering that, especially now since everybody's a little isolated to be able to, I feel like you can create that somewhere else and then upload them and say, here, you can use this kind of wherever you want. So,
Mhm.
I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. I honestly think that's a really good idea, being able to provide that for them.
Mm,
Um, that's something that I would want to also talk to you in the future. I think that would
yeah,
be really amazing to work on that.
yeah,
But I really, really like want to also focus on everything custom. So if we were to be able to create a custom package
mhm,
of these photos so that we make sure we get the right aesthetic or feel for it, I think that would be awesome just because I feel like that's what makes it like a little extra special, when
yeah,
it comes to that person's brand and everything just kind of represents them.
for sure, for sure. Awesome. Well, for people that want to follow along with what you're doing, where can they find you online?
They can find me on Instagram or TikTok or actually any social media as Ayesha Mahali.
Nice. Well, we'll tag everything below too, since just make sure to get the spelling right and everything. And you said website coming soon?
Yes, I'll be sharing the release date on my Instagram, so make sure you guys are following along.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining. And yeah, I hope people check you out because I think stories are definitely where it's at. So people need to know what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.